Hello, I'm James Preston and welcome to Executive Corner Expert Talks. In this edition, we're taking an in-depth look at i4T Global, who have created an ecosystem designed to protect, maintain and enhance the value of property assets by simplifying field service management processes. To talk us through exactly how that works, co-founder, COO and CPO Sachi Wickramage joins me. Sachi, welcome to Kalkine.
Thank you for having me, James.
Well, Sachi, great to have you here. Let's start by getting acquainted with i4T Global. What exactly is it that your company does?
Yeah, so we, as i4T, we are here to disrupt the field service management industry because we have a highly innovative ecosystem of products catering to all stakeholders, primarily three stakeholders. And the way we do this is not just as a siloed solution, but as a highly integrated solutions ecosystem, which creates a very compelling user experience.
Now, you mentioned those stakeholders there. Who are your stakeholders exactly?
Yeah, so we break it down to mainly three because field service management revolves around the property assets and the three personas surrounding them. Number one being the property occupant, the person who occupies the property. And we would say this is the person with the problem most of the time. And then comes the person who can solve the problem. We call them the field service suppliers. And then the intermediary who bridges the relationship between these two, we call them the authorized service agents. So our i4T Global ecosystem caters to all three stakeholders.
Yeah, wonderful. It does seem like a completely integrated service that makes sure it's nice and smooth from start to finish. Can you take us through exactly what the benefits are of using your service as opposed to someone else, for example?
Absolutely, because since it's an ecosystem which is connecting all three parties, now the person can be coming from any of these verticals. If you are a tenant, if you are a property occupant, if you have any problem with your property in terms of you might be having problems with your air conditioning or with your electricity. And especially when you are in a rent role, you are not in a position to get the job done yourself. So you are supposed to go through to your property manager or the strata manager. And we simplify this experience by providing a highly intuitive, user-friendly mobile app for the tenant point of view. But when it comes to the property managers or the strata or the facilities manager, we have a very comprehensive product suite which allows them to manage the entire rent roll portfolio as well as the suppliers at the same time.
So run me through a hypothetical situation here. Let's say that I'm renting a certain place and I, for example, don't have enough water pressure. What is the process of using your app? Do I log on to that and try and contact my real estate agent, or is it directly to a tradesman? How exactly does that process work?
Absolutely. It's actually always good to start with an example. So James, if you are the tenant, if you have this problem, life is very easy for you because you just have to download this app, and within i4T app, you can already select the service providers or the field service suppliers, as we call them, who are pre-certified by the property management company. So it's a matter of you going through them, and they are ranked based on the rating that they have received. So the highest ranking people, service providers, will be on top. As well as you have advanced functionalities like you can apply your own filters, meaning when trying to call for a supply, you can say things such as you are looking for someone with police clearance, someone with working with children's certificate, and someone with a higher ranking. So you have the complete control to select the supplier. And once you select the supplier, once you put your problem description as well as you can put a picture or two, it goes directly to your property manager for the pre-approval. So property manager or the strata manager can now do a pre-approval and give the go-ahead for the supplier to go ahead and provide the service completion. And the best part is you as a tenant, you don't have to worry and waste your time waiting for that supplier to come, because it's just like what we are used to these days. It's like Uber. You can see the supply coming on the map real time. It saves your time and gives you peace of mind.
So how do these various tradespeople and also the property managers actually get involved with your platform? Is it something that you're reaching out to them, or are they coming to you? How do they get listed?
It happens both ways, James. Now, specifically, if you look at the real estate ecosystem, most of the real estate companies or the strata companies, they already do have a list of suppliers that they have been working with. They already
Yep.
have relationships with. So when the real estate organization signs up with i4T Business or i4T Global rather, they are in a position to allow us to onboard their existing supplier space. So it's more like a bulk acquisition. At the same time, we on our own keep on expanding the suppliers database as well. So these suppliers either brought into the platform by real estates or the strata, as well as the ones that naturally, organically come through to the platform, goes into a single pool of suppliers, which is an ever expanding pool of suppliers.
Now, this all seems to be quite focused on renters and also property managers, but is there any scope, for example, for someone who is, I suppose, living not in a unit complex and perhaps they own their own house and they don't have to deal with strata? Is there any application for what you do for those kind of people?
Absolutely. That's for people like you and I. We can download the i4Tradies branded application. It's not connected to any real estate, strata, or a facilities management company. You just download the app based on the location of your property. You get to see the service providers in your vicinity. And at the same time, James, if you download the app and if you're looking for a service provider, maybe for your parents' place, which is elsewhere, you can even key in that address and look for the suppliers and place the order. And it happens with the absolute convenience, and you're always on top of the conversation loop.
Well, Sachi, I can tell you now, you're 100% right. I would be looking for my parents' place. This property market is way too hot for me at the moment. I can't get in, unfortunately. Let's talk a little bit about the changing technology that we're experiencing in 2021. It's gone ballistic the past few years between the Internet of Things, blockchain technology and augmented reality, all sorts of things that are happening. We look at the announcement, for example, from Facebook last week. It's just ever evolving. Has i4T Global incorporated any of these new technology instruments into the business? And if you have, how has it changed the processes?
The real estate, the property sector is actually quite slow to change, if not reluctant to, despite its enormous size. And we know that it's the largest and the most valuable asset class in the world, but change is now happening. It's beginning as the potential for large-scale improvements become more and more apparent. And James, the word PropTech was practically unheard of a few years ago. But today, there is a wide acceptance of innovation in property sector and more customer centricity. And it's actually very exciting to see how the new technologies, as you mentioned, like the predictive algorithms, machine learning, virtual and augmented reality, together with IoT, is gearing up for this big disruptions in PropTech. And we as i4T Global is actually aspiring to be one of the leaders in this disruption, not only in Australia, but globally as well.
Yeah, wonderful. We'll touch on your global expansion in just a moment, but I want to pull up on one little point there. You mentioned there's a bit of reluctance from the property sector to I suppose, veer off into more of these new technological instruments. Why do you think that is? Why isn't it simply a case of, adopting a smoother transitional process into something that could potentially be very helpful for them?
Yes, that's actually a very good question. There can be different answers, but the perception I have is this is because it's been working fine. So people have this perception that if it is not broken, let's not fix it. But what happens is, James, if you do not take that leap, someone else would do that, and all of a sudden you have lost the game before it's even started.
Absolutely. Now, look, technology is one component. We will touch on your global expansion in just a moment. But I think with technology, that is certainly... It's a case about logistics and how you work the platform, but a lot more these days we're looking at things such as conscious consumers or businesses incorporating different sort of sustainability and inclusivity practices. Does i4T Global have a stance on any of those positions? Are you pretty much up to date with those sort of changing paradigms in ethics within business?
My exposure to the WSA and its commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals agenda gives me a broader perspective into the imperativeness of inclusivity as well as sustainability at a larger scale. So the strategy for i4T Global is to be a for-purpose organization, and it consists of practically 4 steps. So first what we do is we arrive at our TOC, our theory of change for impact. And once we have that ready, what we do is we continue to collect data in alignment with our TOC. And as the third step, we bring in the impact measurement metrics In this case, we use the UN SDGs framework, which is the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And as of now, as i4T Global, we cater to primarily three of them, the SDG number 8, 9, and 10 to be precise, which is the decent work and economic growth, and industry innovation and infrastructure, as well as reduced inequalities. And as the fourth and the last step is actually the most important one, which is to evaluate periodically to foster a continuous improvement mindset. Because once you have your TOC mapped, your data collection is in check, and SDGs aligned to your impact, it's safe to say, James, that the data we collect will help us to make better decisions, and it will create a compelling narrative and make better impact continuously.
And look, I do trust your company to use the data responsibly, unlike some other giant fintech corporations, which will remain nameless for now. So we're certainly going to veer away from the Zuckerbergs, but I think what you're doing with your data is genuinely trying to make a positive difference, which I'm always about. Now, just as we start wrapping up here, Sachi, let's take a look at your global expansion. Obviously, you're an Aussie brand. That's where you started up here in both Australia and New Zealand before expanding. How has that process been, and has it been a bit more difficult the last 2 years with the pandemic?
Oh, well, actually, the opportunities are immense, James. Now, the field service management sector is due for an accelerated growth, specifically over the next few years. And looking at the stats, it's actually quite interesting, because there was a research done by the VMS, talks about the property services market, which the FSM caters to. And it was valued at $281 billion back in 2018. And the most interesting part is not that. It's the forecast. The forecast is for it to be $1.1 trillion by 2026. So it's actually quadrupling the growth in just under 8 years. And specifically the pandemic, as you mentioned, and the post-pandemic digital transformations are fueling this growth projectile. And the timing is perfect for us to go global. And we are really excited for this.
I'm really excited for you as well, Sachi. It sounds like you've got a fantastic business there, which has got a lot of upside. Just before I let you go, where can we find the app and what's the website?
Head on to i4tglobal.com. Everything's there.
Brilliant. Okay, well, Sachi, thank you so much for your time. Really interesting chat.
Pleasure.
Well, that's Sachi Wickramage, the co-founder, COO and CPO of i4T Global. And if you missed any part of that interview, simply head across to our YouTube channel, Kalkine Media. I'm James Preston, reminding you to stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.